Hi everyone, it's Diane with SewBatik, and today is Fabric Friday. Today also happens to be Groundhog's Day. And I guess we're gonna have an early spring, which is really super fun. A shorter winter is always a wonderful thing up here when we have brutal winters, but I have to say this year has not been a brutal winter at all. We barely have any snow outside. It's been in the 40s. I think it's gonna go back down into the 30s and the 20s next week and the following week, but otherwise it's really been an amazing warm winter so far, which is both good and bad. I live in a very, very farming community, and so we do need to have our winter moisture. Otherwise, we have some troubles with the crops in the spring and the summer. So I know we're going to get another storm. I can only dream that we'll have an early spring. But anyway, enough about the weather. I really want to talk to you today about a fun project that we were working on the last couple of weeks. And we really haven't talked a lot about our Batik linen. And so that's the topic of today, is a lot about Batik linen. And the shirt that I have right here is really intended to be a pajama top, but I turned it into a shirt because I have always wanted to, and you guys probably have heard me say this before, so hopefully I'm not too redundant, but I have always wanted to find a pattern, and I just haven't found one, to be honest, that is a loose fitting classic shirt style shirt. And when I saw the Fran Pajama top on, I think it was Instagram, Facebook, someplace, when I was kind of like scrolling through, and I found this new pattern that had just come out, and I went, oh my gosh, I have to make this. And I really wanted to make this out of linen. And so this is the pattern. It is a closet core pattern, and it's beautifully done. So if you are looking for both a pajama, which is really going to be a comfortable pajama once I make one of those, and really are interested in the top that I'm going to show you today, it's really a great pattern for both. Let's talk a little bit about the pattern, and then I'm going to share all of the components of the top that we made out of the linen. But the closet core pattern, because it is pajamas, it has a lot in it. We've got the shirt itself, and then the separate elastic, optional drawstring pant. I'm not going to talk about the pant here at all today. We're going to hit that on another conversation because I am going to make the pajamas. The top itself and the pattern itself, let me step back, is for a size range of an extra, extra small to a 4X. That is the bust size of a 31 to a 60. And that's the range there. And the waist, and I think the most important thing for the waist and the hip here is going to be for the pant itself, because the pajama top or the shirt is very loose fitting. It's intended to be a loose fitting garment. So the waist for an extra, extra small is a 24 to a 53. And then we have the hip of a 33 inches to 62. So it's a really, really wide ranging size pattern, and it's wonderful. I love that it's all in one pattern sleeve as well. Now, besides the fabric, one thing to think about here for the fabric requirements, they're really great about having requirements for both the 45-inch wide fabric, if you're going to select a cotton or even something as nice as a rayon to make your pajama, or a 58-inch wide fabric requirement listing as well. We're going to be talking about linen here today, and our linen measures 54 inches wide. So we're closer to the 58-inch wide requirement here. So I based my yardage that I started with on the 58-inch wide recommendation, and then I kind of worked from there. Great is that the pattern gives you the yardage for the top separately from the pant and then combined as well. So they give that some consideration, and all the layouts in the pattern are for all three of those options. So I'm just looking at the top, And so what I did, and I have a couple of notes here on my table, but I cut and washed 3 yards of our 54-inch wide linen, and it did shrink about 2 inches or so. And so it was just shy of 108, so it was like 106 inches that I started with on my table. And I was able to lay out the pattern pieces to only use about 84 inches. So that's slightly, it's right between the 2 and 2.5 yard mark, is what I used for a size medium. And so that's what I did, a straight size medium. And you'll see, I'm going to put up some pictures of me wearing the garment so that you can see what it looks like on me as a medium. I think I have one where I'm twirling around a little bit, so you'll see what it looks like on me. But I have to tell you, I wore it the other day with a white shirt, a long sleeve shirt underneath it. I just really wanted a little bit of extra warmth, and it was amazingly comfortable. I just really love it, and I'm gonna definitely make more of this garment. But in addition to the fabric, there is fusible interfacing that's required. Takes a yard of 20-inch wide fusible interfacing. I used the Pellon, and the number that I used is the 568. And it's fusible, and it looks like a woven cotton actually. And so it's a little bit of a heavier interfacing. I'm not using the Silk Envy this time on this particular garment because I really wanted to make sure that there was a little bit more structure to the front facing as well as the collar, and it really provided that level of strength. Our kits will include the Pellon 568. And it does call for a yard. I was able to use about 28 inches of it, and so you'll have a little bit extra, but our kits will include the yard depending. I just want to make sure that however you lay out your interfacing, that you have enough for your project. And then I used the So Fine thread, a matching thread, and this is number 441. And the color, I should bring this up here for you, but what I decided to use was this really, really rich color. And this is the motif of Medora Flora. And the colorway is Pinot Noir. The thread, which is number 441, I'm sure it has a color name to it. I just don't know that off the top of my head, but it just worked beautiful with this linen. And I selected buttons. It does require, now here is a note to remember too on this pattern. The back of the pattern says that it takes 5 buttons. It actually takes 6 because there's 4, let's see, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going up the front of the shirt. And then there's a little button loop over here that is the 6th button. So get 6 buttons, not 5, unless you aren't into the button loop. You don't have to put a button loop on it, but it really adds a lot of character to the front of the top. I used kind of a, I don't know, I really felt that there was a lot of blue, that really kind of a turquoisey, dusty blue in this fabric. And so I selected buttons to accent that color. And I really like the look of that color. So that's it. We need the interfacing, we need buttons, and those are 3/8 or 1/2 inch buttons. And then again, of course, the pant needs your elastic and drawstring, but we're not going to talk about any of the pant here. I also want to talk a little bit about the style of the top. There is a front pocket, which I think is really fun to have on this top. And again, if you're not a pocket person, you don't have to put the pocket on the front of the garment, but it finishes nicely with the collar. And then the back, it does have a back yoke, and the construction process of the back yoke is it is finished on the inside, and so it takes you through that step of rolling up the fabric to create your burrito, to stitch and seal in the yoke so it has a beautiful finish on the inside of the back yoke. And it has a box pleat in the center, which adds a lot of fullness to the shirt. And then there are really beautiful side seam split here on both sides, of course. And it has an interesting finish to this, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then I think what I really like about this top as well is that it has a really deep hem. There's about a 2-inch hem. The cuffs on the sleeve, it's a double fold cuff. And so it really gives it a beautiful finish where the seam is inside and finished nicely inside the sleeve. I mean, don't you think that's just a beautiful style for a loose fitting shirt? I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. Let's talk a little bit about the pattern pieces. I want to share with you how many different pieces there are and kind of the fit and the style of them, because I think it gives you a little bit more indication of how loose fitting it is or how boxy it is as well. So this is the front pattern piece. So here's our center front and the side seam. So it is perfectly straight. There's no A shape to it or any curve whatsoever. And then of course the front pocket. The back is, again, very straight. There's our arm, and then here's the attachment for the yoke. And this is our box pleat right in the center. This is placed on the fold. Our sleeve is just your traditional sleeve, okay? And it cuts short because of the cuff itself that's on the bottom of the sleeve. Here is the cuff. So it will be folded and sealed inside to give it just an amazing fit. I think this is probably my preference of any kind of sleeve cuff. I just really like how it's finished, and I like how the seam is sealed, and everything just looks beautiful. Here's the front facing. Pretty typical. And then we have the back yoke, which is placed on the fold, and we're going to cut 2 of these, of course. Here's our pocket that gets flipped down. Here is the neck collar. And then there are, for the side splits themselves, there is a little piece that is used to finish off the inside of the side seam to give it a really amazingly finished split opening. And so we cut 4 of this, plus a couple pieces of interfacing for this one as well. So there aren't a lot of pieces in here, but again, if your pocket is optional or the loop is optional, the rest you absolutely need. Okay, now the one thing I want to talk to you about, I'm going to put up a picture of the layout that I used to lay out the pattern pieces. I have to tell you that, and I might have mentioned this on a prior Fabric Friday, but I got a little bit confused on the yardage that is needed for the top. And extra small through a small takes 2 3/4 yards fabric. A medium and a large takes 3 yards, and that's why I started with 3 yards of our linen. The extra large and the 1X take 2.5 yards, so it takes less fabric. And then the 2X to 4X takes 2 3/4 yards, which is the same amount of yardage as the extra small. If you already own this pattern and you're looking for the perfect fabric to make a top or the pant, the whole thing, really take a look at your fabric layout and make sure that you're comfortable with how they want you to lay out or how they recommend laying out the pattern pieces. Because the reason that the extra large and the large drops down in yardage to 2.5 is because every single pattern piece is cut out from a single layer. There is no folding over to put the back of the garment on the fold, or I think that is the only pattern piece except for the yoke that's on the fold. And so everything is flat, one layer, and then because it's flat and one layer, you can position your pattern pieces amazingly close together. Kind of, if you get the Jenga style of everything kind of like, or puzzle piece style, where everything kind of fits in perfectly, you don't need as much yardage to cut out your garment. If that is uncomfortable for you, or it's just not something that you do, that you're a traditional, I don't even know if I should say a traditional, but I guess I look at it that way, where you fold your fabric, you put all of your pattern pieces that are on the fold, and then you can do all the rest of them. Just know, if that is the way you like to lay things out, you may need additional yardage. So if you do already own the pattern, take a look at the fabric layout and feel comfortable with the yardage that you're going to need for your pattern. When we put together our project kits, I am going to list in the kit description how many yards there will be for each size grouping. I really took a lot of time to lay out each one of the layouts based off of size. And so I'm pretty comfortable putting together the yardage for a folded fabric method. There will be more yardage in your kit than needed if you're going to lay this whole thing out as a single layer. But I just kind of felt like, from my experience, that a lot of us are fabric folders. And then we cut out everything that is on the fold and then follow that up with everything else. And so that's what I'm going to do. And if you guys have any questions about that, let me know. I can work with you on that. But I just kind of feel like I need to include a little bit more yardage in those kits for those of you who like to lay things out in a double layer and not a single layer. I guess that's the easiest way to put that. Let's talk a little bit about the garment construction and the pattern instructions themselves. Everything is pretty easy to follow, but a couple things to think about. The pattern is written starting with the pant and then the top. However, the pockets, there is a pocket on the top and one pocket on the pant. They're both prepared and attached right at the beginning of the pattern's instructions. So don't forget to do your pocket before you jump into or go to the page that really talks about the top itself, okay? The pattern is designed for 5/8 inch seam allowance. However, really pay attention, because there are a couple of places where the seam allowance changes to 3/8 of an inch and then 1/2 inch. And I think the 1/2 inch is when we're working on the back yoke itself. So pay attention to that step. Let's see, the button loop itself here, when you are looking at the illustration, it has a zoomed in illustration of how that button loop is folded and attached before the facing is attached to it. So I looked at that and I kind of felt like it was reverse of what I would like when I put the loop on the top of the button. So really take a look at that, but just know that if you need to, if for some reason it was put on the wrong way, you can always flip your fabric to the other direction. So you don't have to remove anything or take out any stitches if it's on the wrong way, but just pay attention to that illustration. For some reason it looked kind of reverse to me, okay? The sleeve is attached to the front, the yoke, and the back flat. So it's not in the round. We're not sewing up our sleeve and then attaching it to the garment. It is flat, which is my favorite way to attach a sleeve, by the way. I don't know why, it's just my favorite way. And the instructions are written so that we have 2 gathering stitches between 2 circles. And it says the word circle. There are no circle markings on the pattern, at least the pattern pieces that I have in my particular pattern. They may have changed, but there aren't any circles. And so I think the reference simply should be that you can stitch your gathering lines, your stitch lines, between the notches themselves. So the front single notch and the back double notch on your sleeve, sew your gathering stitches between those 2 markings and everything will be fine. The ease is really, you don't need much of a gather at all. It's just a slight ease into the top of your sleeve. The side seams are sewn once you have your sleeve attached and the cuff attached to your sleeve as well. We start our side seam at the top of the split that we're going to sew, all the way up through our sleeve and down through the cuff, and then fold the cuff up. And I really love how the cuff is finished. It's a simple, clean look that seals the seam inside that cuff, and it's really beautiful. I think the most complicated, for me anyway, the most complicated piece is a different way of finishing off the split in the side seam. So really pay attention to that, and you may have to read it a couple of times for attaching the small slit. They're kind of, I don't know if you call them a facing, but they're a finishing fabric piece that's attached to the split to give it an amazingly nice finish. So really pay attention to that as well. But otherwise, I just think it is a really simple to construct garment, and it just finishes so beautifully. And I'm gonna absolutely love it, and I know you will as well. I mean, look at the back. It just has such a flowing look to it, and it just creates a great, great shirt. Worn open, it can be a beautiful jacket as well. So it's not simply for a pajama. Okay, now I really also want to thank Kathy for doing an absolutely amazing job sewing this garment and all the finishing work, because some of the top stitching that they recommend only goes down to a certain spot, or it happens to just be in certain places, and she really does an amazing job finishing all of the front facing edges with some top stitching, the collar with top stitching, and then the beautiful finish around the sleeve opening as well. It's just a really, really wonderful job. So I really appreciate that, Kathy, all the extra work that you do on sewing these garments. The next top I want to talk to you about today is the top I'm wearing, however, in the linen version. This, if you recall, because I always get a question from somebody about what am I wearing and what's the pattern that I'm wearing. And this is a rayon, but this is the Sew House 7 Remy Raglan top that I'm wearing. And I just wanted to bring this back out again because it really shows how fun the linen is. Oops. When you put it in a top, it just flows beautiful. And this again is a very, very simple, this is a raglan sleeve, thus the name Remy Raglan. And it has a simple finish to the cuff, simple finish to the neckline, and a slit down the center of the front with a button, and again, another loop, a button closure here, and a simple hem. And this is the linen, and it's the animal print motif in the color of charcoal. Just a beautiful, beautiful top. And I think the other reason I really like to show some of the garments that are made with the linen is the drape of the linen and how wonderful it is and how nicely it drapes. It's just beautiful. Both of these garment kits are on our website, and always remember that even though we've given you a few different color options or fabric options to select from in the drop-down list of fabric choice, you can always select the option of customize your kit, and in the space right below there, you can type in the name of the linen fabric that you would love us to put in the kit. So you have any choice of linen that you would like for your custom garment kit. And they're really, really super fun to make. Things to think about when working with our Batik linen. Always pre-wash your fabric, and I don't want this to sound like an infomercial, but use the Synthropol in your washing machine. And for 3 yards of fabric, as an example, I used probably a teaspoon and a half for 3 yards, and I used lukewarm water with a warm rinse, gentle cycle, because all I'm really trying to do is wash this fabric and get rid of any excess surface dyes and wax that might be sitting on the surface of the fabric. Then I shake that fabric out of the, when I take it out of the washing machine, put it in the dryer for a few minutes, and I use a dryer sheet. That's just my way of putting things in the dryer. And then I take it out, press it, and have it all ready to lay out my pattern pieces. But the first thing to do before you put the fabric in the washing machine, and I'm going to show you this here, is this is the cut edge. This is another piece of fabric. This is linen. So this is the cut edge of the fabric. Take a few minutes before you put this in the wash to, if you have a serger, run it through your serger, doesn't matter what thread you have on it, and just seal the edge, seal that cut edge. And you're not trying to cut any fabric off or straighten it or anything, you're just trying to seal the edge, because linen ravels and it'll just make much easier in your washing machine if you seal that edge. You can use a zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch on your sewing machine, just the same, and you'll get that same result. So take the time to do that. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how nice it comes out and easy it is to press and everything. Okay, so do that. I recommend the needle size for whether it be my serger or my sewing machine is an 80-12. And these are both, this is a top stitch needle, this is a universal needle. Either one will work just fine. Whatever you have, that is the size of an 80-12. And the thread I recommend is either a 50 weight or a 40 weight, polyester or cotton poly, whatever coordinates with your fabric. And I really have found that the interfacing that we selected for this top is really a great weight of interfacing for the linen. And I know in past episodes where I've talked about different projects, I might have used the Envy Silk, which is even a really like a featherweight, lightweight interfacing. And I think when it comes to the structure needed for a collar and a front facing that has buttons and buttonholes, it is really good to have a heavier interfacing. And this isn't heavy, it is just adds a little bit more structure to it. And so this is the Pellon 568, I believe. And so I think this is a really, really great interfacing for our linen as well. The other thing I want to talk to you about a little bit is laying out your pattern pieces and cutting out pattern pieces with the linen. You'll find that it has a tendency of moving on you a little bit, and I know the rayon does as well. And so this is probably the same instruction that I would give you if it were if we were talking about rayon too. But once you lay out your fabric, if you're using a cutting mat like what I have on the table here, things can shift on you a little bit. So always make sure, first and foremost, your fabric never hangs over the top of your table. Make sure that you leave enough space so that you can fold your fabric onto your table and that it's not pulling one way or another. I think that is one of the biggest lessons learned that I was ever taught years ago, was to always leave your fabric on the table surface so it's not pulling one way or another. Because hanging fabric over the edge adds weight. And if it's not even, you're going to distort how your pattern pieces lay on your fabric. And then I really recommend, when it comes to the linen, using pattern weights. That little extra weight that the pattern weights can have on your fabric, instead of pinning, and the act of pinning your pattern piece to the fabric will move the fabric just a little bit. And when you're working with cotton or jersey knit or something that might be a little bit heavier, that doesn't really move by itself, using pins is just fine. I find that to be just the fastest way to do any kind of pattern layout and cutting. But with the linen, I really like to use pattern weights. What I do, though, is I will take pins, put a couple of pins along my grain line to make sure that I can measure from my selvage in and that is straight. I don't use pins anywhere else. I'll put my pattern weights down, and then if I'm on a cutting mat like this, I'll use a rotary cutter to cut out my pattern pieces, and a scissors wherever I really need to get into something a little bit like a sharper spot or a point. I will use my scissors for that. I find it to be faster and a little bit more accurate if I can hold my pattern piece down and then use my rotary cutter all the way around. However, if you don't have a big cutting surface or cutting mat to work with, I know when I'm at home, I often use the old-fashioned cardboard mat. Remember these? I put this seriously on a bed because I don't have a huge surface at home without taking my dining room table or my kitchen table. So I will lay this out on a bed, and this is cardboard. And I'll put the fabric on the top of this, and this is quite large, okay? And if I need to secure the fabric, because it's even gonna move more on this cardboard, I will use pins and pin the edge of my selvage or spots along my fabric directly to this cardboard. And it won't move, the fabric will not move. And then lay out my pattern pieces and use my pattern weights and use a scissor, of course, because you can't use a rotary cutter on cardboard, but you will use a scissor to cut it out, okay? So there are so many different options for laying out your fabric, but I think just making sure that it doesn't move is a great use for pattern weights. And I just noticed that, a side note, that this cardboard mat, if I could call it that, cost $3.29. Can you imagine how long ago I bought that? Oh my goodness. Anyway, that was a little bit about how to lay out the fabric. I don't know. I think the other thing is when you're working with it and you're sewing with the linen, your pattern instructions will tell you when to press seams open or when to press to smooth things out. And I think just don't overpress, because linen is a woven fabric. It is going to want to move on you. Sew your garment and press as needed, because I think when it comes to linen, every time we see a crease, sometimes we want to press it out when we're sewing something. And linen has that nice look of, I don't know, kind of, you can either have it super pressed or it's going to look a little bit worn. And either way, linen looks beautiful. So don't overpress. That's the only other thing that I think I would recommend when working with linen. One thing to also think about when you're working with the linen is your seams and your seam finishings. Some of the patterns that I have used and read will recommend different finishings. For example, using your serger for an overlock stitch to either sew your seam or to finish the edges of your seam. You can use a zigzag stitch or an overlock foot if you have that, or an overlock stitch on your traditional sewing machine. But it's really a good practice to eliminate any potential ravel by just finishing those seams. It really adds a nice finish to your garment. So those are some of the ins and outs of working with our linen and laying it out and cutting out your pattern pieces. And I know you're going to enjoy, whether it be this top or pajama or the Remy Raglan or any of the other garment kits that we have on our website that really feature our Batik linen. The next Fran Pajama project I have on my to-do list is actually truly pajamas. And I decided that I was going to try my hand at making these pajamas out of our cotton, and this is our 115-inch wide cotton, and it has a border on both selvage edges. You see that border? This is just a beautiful, beautiful shade of dusty denim, and this is the Phoenix motif, and it transitions into this border. if I can get this to work right, my goal is to have both the sleeve cuff and the pant hem out of this border fabric. I'm going to do my best to run that along the ends of the pant and the top. I haven't decided yet if I want to run the border all the way around the top or not. I'm going to have to do some pattern layout to see what will work and what won't work. But it's going to be fun to give myself a challenge to see what we can do with this double border. We call it a double border because their borders are running along both selvage edges. We'll figure out how much yardage we really need out of the 115-inch wide fabric. And it's going to be kind of interesting. So that is truly going to be a pajama. Should be fun to make. In the sewing room, we have 4 different projects that we're working on. And the first one is one that I am sewing. I'm almost done with this jacket. It is the Simplicity 9239. And it looks like a classic shirt, but I really envision this as a jacket. And so I selected the canvas, and I used our heavier 8.6 ounce canvas. This is the remains of my cutting out the pattern, but this is the Valhalla motif in the colorway of Lavender Lantern. And if you've been following us on social media, I've been posting pictures of progress of this jacket. And so far I have the front and the back attached, the facings are on, the collar is on, and I finished the sleeves with the cuff. However, I have not sewn the sleeve onto the jacket, and then I just have to hem it and add the buttons and I'll be done. But it's been kind of interesting, and I can't wait to share this with you because the pattern, as a classic shirt, the requirements are to have interfacing and all these traditional notions for a classic style shirt. With the heavier 8.6 ounce canvas, I have not used interfacing. I just don't see the need because it is so heavy. And I'm also learning how to turn and create a point, like a true collar point with this heavier canvas. It is a little tricky, and I think I might have to show a little bit of a demo of what I did in order to get the points to be as pointy as I could make them. But I really have enjoyed sewing with the canvas to make a garment, not simply a bag, an accessory project. So this is really a lot of fun for me. The second project in the sewing room is a longer shirt, long sleeve, again with a simple cuff, and it is Simplicity 9707. Isn't this fun? And the pattern comes in 2 size ranges, a 4 to a 12, and then a 12 to a 20. And we decided on our Batik Rayon, it's a bold color again. This is the remaining fabric from cutting out the pattern pieces. But this is the Flock Together motif in the colorway of Jubilee Red. How beautiful is this? It's really bold color, and I think it's going to make a beautiful long shirt slash jacket. Okay, and Kathy is working on this one right now, so I'm really anxious to see how that's going along as well. From a bag perspective, I am going to be working on the Sidekick, and I know this is going to be a tutorial. I'm really excited to get this one filmed and made because I think I had a call from a customer who really wants to make this for Mother's Day, and I think it really will make an amazing Mother's Day gift. So I'm gonna do a tutorial on this particular bag, and I've selected and pre-quilted, already got this done, the canvas, and this is the 5 ounce canvas with a cotton lining, okay? And so this is the Gardenese Divine motif in the shade of Firecracker Red, and I coordinated that with our Valhalla motif again, and this is Lamb Chop is the name of the color for this purple. And we have another bold color as the coordinate, but we'll get into all of that later. But this is all pre-quilted. I put this on the long arm and got that quilted up, and that's just a half a yard of the canvas. And that's all that's needed for this particular bag. So step by step, we're making progress on each one of these. And last but not least, I'm going to do a little bit of home decorating in our home. It is time to really brighten up from the fall and holiday season. And so a couple days ago, I cut 2 yards of our 115-inch wide fabric. And this is the Valhalla motif in the shade of Mint Garden. And this is going to be a tablecloth for our dining room table. And I'm going to have to select some fabrics for table napkins, and I like to do fabric chargers underneath the plates. And so I'll probably need your help with some of those selections, but I think this is going to be a great base to the whole look of getting ready for Valentine's Day, for Easter, and just really bringing spring into the house. So it's going to be a lot of fun to do that as well. So talked a lot about different things today, whether it be the linen or our projects that are on the way in the sewing room. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you have any questions or comments, definitely comment below or send us an email at services@SewBatik.com. We're always available for a chat on our website. Click that little chat button in the lower right-hand corner of any of the screens, and we'll answer any questions that you have. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all of your favorite social media sites to see how we're doing with all these projects. So have a great Fabric Friday. Have a great Groundhog's Day. Have a great weekend. Keep sewing, smiling, and sharing.